Well, howdy folks, Alcrax here, and welcome to Mercenary Thoughts from the Inner Sphere, episode 150. And today we're going to be talking about a mech that is, well, it's not really widely known. It's the Caesar. You don't see it too often. I've seen it mostly played at Gen Con on a rare occasion, and even some strange different versions of what's in the book. Now, the Caesar is a 70-ton mech. It's a 460, doesn't have any jump jets, but it does have some interesting weapons. Now, this thing was originally based on the Cataphract, but with the FedCom, they sort of tweaked it a little bit with their own little version of it, and sort of made something that, well, good and bad. All right, let's just put it that way. Now, the Caesars, like I said, it's 70 tons. Comes in with an XL engine, which is, well, on a 460 mech, that's kind of bad. Because it has a tendency to get nuked pretty quickly. All you gotta do is lose a torso and she's done. But it's backed up with 168 points of armor, which isn't great. Not bad, not great. It's about 3/4 of what it could be. That is the problem, because when you got XL engines, I'd like to have as much armor as possible, because if you're facing off against, like, say, the clans or any other high-tech weaponry, that armor disappears pretty quickly, and, well, if you lose a torso, this thing is done dinner. Now, it's backed up with a plethora of kind of new weaponry, which is old weaponry. It has a Gauss rifle in the right torso with 2 tons of ammo. In the left torso, has a ER-PPC in the right arm, and has a medium pulse laser in the left and right arm, and then it has 2 medium pulse lasers in the right and left torso facing towards the rear. Well, and this thing has 16 double heat sinks. Well, it doesn't necessarily need 16 double heat sinks. Let's just put it that way, because unless you're able to get those 2 rear firing pulse lasers to fire, this thing isn't going to worry about heat too much, because, well, you got 15 plus 8, 9, so you're looking at 24, 26 points of heat. Doesn't necessarily need 32 points of disposition, or 16 doubles to create that dissipation. That's what I'm trying to find. Can't even get that out. It probably could be done with maybe 2 less, and then throw those 2 tons in towards armor, which I would prefer to have more armor on this thing, or kind of how I look at that. Now, how do I usually use the Caesar? I have used it at this version, and actually a different kind of version at Gen Con before, and I usually try to keep this thing towards rear, because it has a Gauss rifle and those, basically, I always like to say it has a PPC and 2 medium pulse lasers. Pulse lasers are just kind of, I always look at it, when something shoots 6 or less, that's an afterthought. You got to be up close and kicking range to be able to use those things most of the time. So you're going to rely on the Gauss rifle and the PPC. Well, they both have really good range, so a lot of times I just look at times I've used it, I find a place to park this thing in the back and then just use it as a fire support mech, direct fire, and just punch holes in people from a distance. And then like when I used it at Gen Con, this version, I parked it in a wood hex, heavy wood hex, and just sat there and fired away all day until the fight got closer, where the clans finally reached to the point where those medium pulse lasers could kick in, and then I started using it. So when I say this thing could get away with having less heat sinks, yeah, it's when you're sitting there trying to use it as a direct fire support mech, it doesn't need that much, that many heat sinks, because that's just kind of wasted tonnage. Even when it gets in close, and the times I used it up close and personal in a knife fight, I still didn't need all that heat for dissipating all that heat with those heat sinks. So it's kind of a waste. But we're just dealing with what we have. Now, a lot of times when I'm using this thing, I try to, like I said, I use it more as a direct fire support mech because I'm trying to shepherd it a little bit. With when I see a mech like this that has those XL engines, I'm not too inclined to get it up too close, because it doesn't take much to kill one of these things when you take out a torso. Now you lose the whole concept of being a zombie mech, where you can lose a torso and just keep on ticking. And another problem with this thing is it has two of its major weapon systems in one side. So if it's a moot point. If you lose the torso, then it's dead. But if you had this thing as a zombie mech, go that concept where you don't have the XL engines on it. This thing lose a torso and you lose almost 90% of your firepower. So yeah, I'm not too enamored. I like to keep like your one heavy system on one side and a heavy system on the other side, so you kind of balances things out, when a design structure. But I didn't design it, so we just have to deal with what we got. So a lot of times I try to run this thing, get it up, use as much cover and concealment as possible, going from one wood hex or trying to get behind a hill or something of that nature, and try to work in conjunction with some faster moving mechs out in front of you that are moving around, and attract attention more away from this mech, so you can get in there and just keep hitting them with the 10 and the 15, 10 and 15. And then when you can get in close enough with the medium pulse lasers, then go ahead and hit them. On the rare occasion you may have somebody behind you, maybe those two medium pulse lasers might get used, but I've never used the medium pulse lasers on the rear. To me, that's wasted tonnage also. I'd rather have them facing out the front. Because on a rare occasion have I ever tried to let somebody get into my rear arc. And, to me, I've never been a fan of rear firing weapons. But, some people, they like them there because, they have a tendency to let people get behind them, and it ends up in type of a rugby scrum where everybody just pile on to each other. So yeah, I guess I could see that. But I always like to keep my mechs in a more linear fashion, where keep them on line, keep your 6 covered by maybe another mech or 2, so you're not letting somebody get in behind you. And if they do, it's probably going to be a light mech that jumped in behind you. And then they're going to have something to shoot at with those 2. But until that point, it's a very rare occasion for me. Now, we do have a few different versions of this thing, but they're later on, because this one came out in the 3050 book, and we're going to be looking at something that popped in later on. So let's just delve into it. So we're talking about the 3R right now. So this next one we have that comes up is the 3S, the Caesar 3S. This one I've played with before also. This one has endo steel and a light ferrofibrous armor, and this one has the rear facing lasers removed to make enough tonnage to swap out the engine for a light engine, which is a good deal. It doesn't kill you with losing a torso. It just cooks you a little bit more. Then those 16 AA zigs that kind of come in handy. So there you go. Alright, so it has, and the ER PPC has been replaced with a heavy PPC, and has a rear firing ER small and a Guardian ECM, and then it has the Gauss rifle with the case. Alright, so this one, you sort of swapping out the light engines for making room so you can throw on the endo steel. It's not a bad mech. I've used it before to pretty good effect. You get in and hit them hard with that heavy PVC that does some good damage, and you're hammering away with that Gauss rifle. And it's sort of follows the same process I always use with using it as a regular Caesar, but now you got a little bit more heavier hitting weapon systems. And you got to get a little closer with it to bring in with the heavy PPC, but hey, that's to each his own. As you know, that is what you're going to have to play with, sure, it's going to work fine. So you just go with it, go with the flow type of thing. Now, I have in the past seen this one, where this version here, where they got rid of the Gauss rifle and replaced it with another heavy PPC. So it was sporting 2 heavy PPCs on board, and it had extra tonnage. If I think it had light XL engines, but it was a 580. They upgraded the engine by taking the tonnage off of the Gauss rifle and replace it with a PPC. And it was not a bad one. It moved around pretty good. I was happy with that. I wish it had jump jets, but getting close with a little closer with those heavy PPCs, it was doing some good damage. So that's one thing I did like about it. And if I remember right, it still was sporting some medium pulse lasers, and it still had a Guardian ECM. So that was an interesting version. I wish I had the sheet for it. That's the interesting thing, is that when you go to Gen Con, a lot of times you're going to see variants of mechs that are not in the books. That's the interesting thing. So, are they considered official? I don't know. That's the question. It begs some interest. We have the 4R. This variant showed up in is more of an improved 3R. Okay, so it was designed with short-range combat in mind. Drops the rear-facing pulse lasers, 3 heat sinks in favor of more armor, and 3 ER medium lasers, mask. So okay, and this increases a burst of speed on board, and it brings forth a snub nose PPC. All right, so this one I never have played with it, but this came out during the Jihad era. So the 4R brings an interesting thought process to it. So you can bring in that quick burst of speed, get in closer with something, bring in those other weapon systems in a little closer, but you still have the ER medium lasers, which I kind of like because you got a little bit more range with them. Yeah, you don't have them as pulse lasers, so your odds of hitting are a little bit less. But if you have a good pilot on board, so it's one of those things where the mask can use it for a one-turn burst, get up there really close, hammer with the weapon systems, and then shut off the mask for a turn and burst it again. So you're not always having that chance of locking up. Because I can guarantee you I always almost guaranteed the second time I ever used mass, I'm locking up. I don't know what it is. It's just I always fail. So I never use it a second turn. I said this before, is that one of our Gen Con games, one of the players that was on our team, he's like, I'm going to go mask again. It's like, how many times you use it? Well, I've used it the previous turn. Don't do it. You're going to lock up. Oh, it won't. It never locks up. What does he do? He locks up right in front of a whole bunch of clan mechs, and he becomes cannon fodder. And he was gone because he had 0 movement modifier. Alright, now we have the 4S variant. This first seen action during the FedCom Civil War. Yeah, when the FedComs decided how Steiner went crazy. This one has an XL engine, has been replaced with a light fusion engine. Redesigned with using Indo steel, so it's kind of like the 3S in a way. Armed with a heavy Gauss rifle, which I'm not a big fan of the heavy Gauss rifle. It's packed up by a large pulse laser. Okay, so you got something that's and 2 medium pulse lasers and a pair of ER medium lasers. So basically this one has gone into being even closer. But you get a little bit maybe considered better weapon systems in a way, maybe not. But I've never been a fan of the heavy Gauss rifle. So it's one of those ones that you have to be fighting in at knife fighting range again. So everything is up close and personal. So you're looking at 12, 10, even shorter ranges, with everything. So not a fan of that one. But I could see its uses. So if by that time, clan weaponry and clan mechs during the FedCom Civil War are pretty prevalent on both sides of the aisle. So you're going to have a lot of intersphere militaries that are going to have access to a lot of clan weaponry or clan mechs on their side. So yeah, it kind of balances out a little bit. Alright, then we have the 5D, which is the Dark Age era, which we don't like to talk about too much because it didn't, some people like to say it didn't exist. This one's protected by hardened armor, carries clan spec weaponry. Hey, we're just talking about that. Capable of physical attack because it has talons and triple strength armor. So yes, this is one of those mechs. You heat up the triple strength, and then you're doing really good damage with you got a claw on board, the talons. So it's like a physical attack weapon. So you're gonna rip off a bunch of armor, but you have to get in close to use it. So yeah, you heat the mech up, get in close, go into physical melee range, and then rip body parts off enemy mechs. But you have to get there first. And that's one of the problems. By that time, you're going to have lots of different weapons out there and mechs that will tear it to pieces before it gets there. Because a lot of times, if you see a mech with a physical attack weapon on board, you know that it's wrapping up a bunch of tonnage into something that has to be used in melee, so it might get focused down pretty quickly. So there you go. Now, variants that I might put out, I kind of like the one that I played at Gen Con. That one, I like the idea of the 2 ERPPCs. I kind of like the idea of it. Or it was 2 heavy PPCs. Now that's kind of an interesting concept to put on board. But it's, if I remember right, it had Indo steel on board, so it was really limited, I think, in the amount of things it can do. Because when you have Indo's light engine and Indo steel, you're losing a lot of internal space. I think that's why they went with 2 heavy PPCs, because of the crit slots. You kind of hard to put a Gauss rifle on something when you have Indo steel and XL engines on board. You're just lacking space for anything else. So pretty much, I'm not really sure if I would change much, or other than maybe, I'd say you get a little closer to down the road where you got access to ER medium lasers. I wouldn't be opposed to swapping out the 4 medium pulse lasers and put a prefla of ER medium lasers on. So when you get in closer, you're gonna hit them hard with the all those ER medium lasers. So maybe swap out the 4 for 6, and then that would be your heat range. Yeah. Okay, so you could use those, and maybe if you still had the Gauss rifle on board, you could still punch something that's not so close with it. With if you're outside the can't even say it, minimum range. But other than that, that's pretty much it. There's not a lot I usually would think about changing on the Caesar, because it's just kind of hard to work with, other than a few variants kind of fit the bill that I've always played. Kind of fits the style a little bit. So if you have any uses for the Caesar, have used it before, put it down below. If you have any documentation listing anything, go ahead and throw that down there. And like and subscribe, share with all your friends, and we'll talk with you all later. This is Hellcrux out.